The night was black as coal, the kind of dark that swallows sound and smothers hope. A flicker of orange danced on the horizon, growing brighter, hungrier. Clara Boone stood frozen on her porch, her collar-oused hands gripping the railing as the acrid stench of smoke filled her lungs. Her family's wheat field, acres of golden stalks that had been her father's pride. Her mother's legacy, her entire world, was burning. Flames roared, devouring everything she'd fought to protect. And in the distance, she heard them. Laughter, cruel, mocking laughter echoing through the Nebraska night. They thought they'd broken her. They thought they'd won. They were wrong. Hey, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it means you'll never miss a story like this one. Because what Clara did next wasn't just revenge. It was a reckoning. Clara Boone was no stranger to hardship. Born on a sprawling farm in the heart of Lancaster County, Nebraska, she'd grown up with dirt under her nails and a fire in her soul. At 24, she was lean and weary with sun-bleached hair pulled back in a messy braid and eyes that held the weight of 1,000 unspoken dreams. Her parents had died 3 years earlier in a car accident, leaving her to run the farm alone. It was 120 acres of wheat, corn, and stubborn hope. The kind of place where the wind whispered secrets, and the land demanded loyalty. Clara gave it everything, every sunrise, every blister, every tear. The farm wasn't just her home. It was her family, her history, her fight. But not everyone in Lancaster County saw Clara's strength as admirable. To the Harper brothers, Jake, Ethan, and Caleb, she was a target. The Harpers were the kind of men who thrived on cruelty, the kind who'd kick a dog just to hear it yelp. They were in their late 20s, broad-shouldered and mean-spirited, the sons of a wealthy cattle rancher who owned half the county. Their father, Vernon Harper, was a man who could buy silence, and his sons knew it. They'd tormented Clara since high school, back when she was the quiet girl who wore hand-me-downs and carried a pocket knife instead of a purse. They'd mocked her for her calloused hands, her muddy boots, her refusal to bow. And when her parents died, leaving her to fend for herself, their cruelty sharpened like a blade. It started small, slashed tires on her old pickup, spray-painted insults on her barn. Whispers in town that she was too proud to accept help, but Clara endured. She fixed the tires, scrubbed the paint, ignored the gossip. She wasn't one to beg or break, but the Harpers wanted more than her discomfort. They wanted her gone. Her farm sat on prime land and Vernon Harper had made offers to buy it. Offers Clara had refused. She wasn't selling her family's legacy, not for any price. So, the brothers escalated. They'd sneak onto her property at night, uprooting crops, breaking fences, leaving threats carved into her mailbox. Sell or suffer, one raid. Clara didn't sell, she suffered. The night of the fire, everything changed. Clara had been up late, balancing the farm's books by lamplight when she smelled smoke. She ran outside barefoot, her heart pounding as she saw the flames tearing through her wheat field. The fire was no accident. It was deliberate, set in a perfect circle with trails of gasoline leading back to the road. She called the fire department, but by the time they arrived, half the field was gone. The sheriff came too, a man named Roy Whitaker, who'd known Clara's father and had a soft spot for her. He found empty gas cans in a ditch, but no fingerprints, no witnesses, just the laughter she'd heard fading into the night. "It's the Harpers," Clara told him, her voice steady despite the tears streaking in her face. "You know it is." Sheriff Whitaker sighed, his eyes heavy. "I need proof, Clara. Without it, my hands are tied." Proof. The word burned hotter than the flames. The Harpers had always been careful, always just out of reach. They'd brag in town about their pranks, knowing no one would dare cross their father. But Clara wasn't like the others. She wasn't going to wait for justice to find her. She'd learned to track deer in the woods with her father, to move silently, to read the land like a map. She wasn't a victim. She was a hunter, and the Harpers had just made themselves her prey. The next morning, Clara stood in the charred remains of her field, the blackened stalks crunching under her boots. The fire had taken a third of her crop, 20,000 worth of wheat. Money she didn't have to lose. Her savings were already stretched thin, her equipment old, her debts piling up. But it wasn't just the money. It was the violation. They'd come onto her land, her sanctuary, and tried to burn her spirit to ash. She clenched her fists, her nails biting into her palms. "You want a war," she whispered to the wind. "I'll give you one." Clara didn't waste time. She drove her battered pickup to the edge of town to a small cabin where old man Tucker lived. Tucker was a Vietnam vet, a grizzled recluse who taught her father how to hunt and survive in the wild. He was 72 with a limp and a cough, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "I need your help," Clara said, standing on his porch. "They burned my field. I'm going after them." Tucker studied her, his weathered face unreadable. Then he nodded. "You got your daddy's fire, girl. But you sure you want to do this? The Harpers ain't deer, they're wolves." Clara met his gaze. "Then I'll be the wolfhound." Tucker taught her what he knew. How to track without being seen. How to use the land as a weapon. How to think 3 steps ahead. He gave her an old hunting rifle, a .3 hunting 8 with a scratched stock, and showed her how to clean and load it. "You ain't shooting nobody," he warned. "This is for protection. You want to hurt him, use their own arrogance against him." Clara listened, but the rifle felt good in her hands. Solid, like an extension of her will. She wasn't planning to kill anyone, but she wanted them to feel fear. The kind of fear they'd made her live with for years. Her first move was reconnaissance. The Harpers hung out at a dive bar called the Rusty Spur, a place where the jukebox played too loud and the air smelled of stale beer. Clara parked her truck a half-mile away and approached on foot, moving through the shadows of the cornfields that bordered the lot. She wore a dark hoodie and her father's old hunting cap, her braid tucked under the brim. From a ditch across the road, she watched them. Jake the eldest with his cocky grin, Ethan the quiet one, always watching, and Caleb the youngest, twitchy and eager to please. They were drunk, laughing about the fire, their voices carrying on the night air. "She'll sell now," Jake said, tossing a beer bottle into the dirt. "Bitch has no choice." Clara's jaw tightened, but she stayed still, memorizing their faces, their habits, their weaknesses. For weeks, Clara became a ghost. She followed them, learning their routines. Jake liked to drive his souped-up Dodge Ram too fast on back roads. Ethan spent hours at the gym, always alone. Caleb was the weak link, always checking his phone, always nervous. She studied their ranch, a sprawling estate with high fences and security cameras, but also blind spots, places where the land dipped low, where the cameras didn't reach. She mapped it all in her head, her father's old hunting journal now filled with notes on her prey. Her first strike was small but precise. Jake's truck was his pride, a gleaming black beast he washed every Sunday. One night, Clara slipped into the lot behind the Rusty Spur and poured sugar syrup into his gas tank. By morning, the engine was ruined, coughing and sputtering like a dying animal. Jake raged outside the bar, cursing everyone in sight, but Clara was already gone, watching from a hill a mile away through her father's binoculars. She didn't smile. This wasn't about joy, it was about justice. Next was Ethan. He worked out at a gym on the edge of town, always late at night when it was empty. Clara waited until he was inside, then slashed his tires and smeared mud across his windshield. When he came out sweating and cursing, he found a note tucked under his wiper blade. "I see you." Ethan's face went pale, and for the first time, Clara saw fear in his eyes. It felt good, not because she enjoyed his suffering, but because it was proof she could fight back. Caleb was trickier. He was paranoid, always looking over his shoulder, but he had a habit of sneaking off to smoke weed behind the old grain silo on their ranch. Clara waited for a moonless night, then crept through the fields, silent as a shadow. She found his stash, a plastic bag hidden in a rusted tin, and replaced his weed with dried oregano. She left another note. You're not as clever as you think. When Caleb found it, he panicked, running back to the ranch house, shouting for his brothers. Clara watched from the darkness, her heart steady. She was unraveling them piece by piece. But the Harpers weren't stupid. They knew someone was targeting them, and they suspected Clara. One night, Jake and Ethan showed up at her farm, pounding on her door. You think you're slick, farm girl? Jake shouted, his voice thick with rage. You're playing a dangerous game. Clara stood on her porch, the rifle hidden behind her back, her voice calm. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're on my land. Leave. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You're alone out here, Clara. No one's coming to save you. She met his gaze, unflinching. I don't need saving. They left, but she knew it wasn't over. The war was escalating. Clara needed proof. Something to tie them to the fire. Something the sheriff couldn't ignore. She remembered the gas cans found in the ditch. They were generic, sold at every hardware store in the county, but Clara had a hunch. The Harpers were careless with their money, always flashing cash at the rusty spur. She started asking around quietly. At the stores where they might have bought the cans at a small gas station outside town, the clerk remembered Caleb buying 3 cans a week before the fire, paying with a crisp $100 bill. Kid was nervous, the clerk said. Kept looking out the window. It wasn't enough for a conviction, but it was a start. Clara's next move was bolder. The Harpers were hosting a big 4th of July party at their ranch. A lavish affair with fireworks in half the town invited. Vernon Harper would be there along with his sons, showing off their wealth and power. Clara saw her chance. She didn't want to destroy them. Not yet. She wanted to humiliate them, to show the town who they really were. She spent days preparing, gathering evidence, photos of the gas cans, recordings of the drunken boasts at the bar, even a blurry video she'd taken of Jake tossing a lit cigarette into her field the night of the fire. It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant doubt. On the night of the party, Clara slipped onto the ranch, moving through the blind spots she'd mapped. The air was thick with the smell of barbecue and gunpowder from the fireworks. She found the control box for the ranch's outdoor speakers and rigged it to play her recordings on a loop. Jake's voice slurring, bragging about the fire, Ethan's laugh. Caleb's nervous agreement as the fireworks lit up the sky. The speakers crackled to life, blasting their words across the crowd. We burned her out. Jake's voice echoed. Shell now. The party went silent, all eyes turning to the Harper brothers, who stood frozen, their faces pale. Vernon Harper stormed toward the speakers, but the damage was done. Whispers spread through the crowd. Clara was gone before anyone could find her. The town turned on the Harpers. People who'd once feared them now saw them for what they were. Bullies hiding behind their father's money. Sheriff Whittaker paid Clara a visit the next day, his face grim. Folks are talking, he said. Found a witness who saw Caleb's truck near your place the night of the fire. We're bringing him in for questioning. Clara nodded, her expression unreadable. Good. The Harpers didn't go down quietly. Jake tried to pin the fire on a drifter, but his story fell apart under scrutiny. Ethan clammed up, refusing to talk. Caleb, the weak link, cracked first, confessing to the sheriff that they'd set the fire to teach Clara a lesson. They thought she'd break, sell the farm, disappear. Instead, she'd hunted them, outsmarted them, exposed them. The brothers were arrested, charged with arson and vandalism. Vern Harper's money couldn't save them this time. Clara stood in her field as the sun set, the charred earth still visible, but already sprouting new green. She'd lost so much. Her crop, her trust, her sense of safety. But she'd gained something, too. The knowledge that she could fight, that she could win. The town saw her differently now. She wasn't just the farm girl anymore. She was Clara Boone, the woman who'd taken on the Harpers and brought them to their knees. As she walked back to her house, the rifle slung over her shoulder. She felt her parents' presence in the wind, in the soil, in the quiet strength of the land. They taught her to stand tall to protect what was hers. And she had. The Harpers had tried to burn her out, but they'd only ignited her fire. Hey, thanks for watching Clara's story. It's a reminder that sometimes the strongest fight comes from the quietest hearts. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. From which part of the country are you watching this video? Drop it below and let's see how far this story travels. Don't forget to like and share if you felt that fire in Clara's soul. Until next time, keep fighting for what's yours.